First of all, let's explore what these defensive weaponry systems really mean, because earlier this week we saw a bit of confusion about whether or not NATO countries were willing to send across what might be more classed as offensive weaponry, aircraft and the like. At the moment, we're sticking to what can clearly fall in that defensive category.
Yeah, I think actually the missile systems, the anti-tank and the anti-air missile systems, in the end, are proving much more effective than 29 of these MiG aircraft that are in the Polish government's inventory that they say they would give to the Americans to go to Ramstein Air Base in Germany for onward transferal to the Ukrainians. The trouble with the MiGs, they're very symbolic, of course they are, but getting them up off the ground in any meaningful sort of way, I think is going to be difficult for the Ukrainians. It's
pretty old Soviet technology, isn't it? A MiG is a plane that requires a lot of ground assistance and constant communication with the ground. And also, it seems to be that a lot of the shelling of cities, particularly in the south of Ukraine, is coming from ground Russian troops rather than from the air.
Yes, that's right. I mean, in terms of the MiGs, obviously, you get them up in the air. Well, Russia also has surface-to-air missile systems, a very significant number of them. It has many more of its own aircraft. But I think in terms of the ground troops, as you were mentioning, and these anti-tank and anti-air missiles, they are proving very effective because clearly Ukraine can't meet Russia head-on in a tank-to-tank battle. They're outnumbered and outgunned in that sense. But actually drawing them in, especially into urban areas, attacking them with anti-air missiles and anti-tank missiles is already, according to Western analysts, proving very effective. Of course, we've got the claims about how many armoured vehicles and tanks and the like that the Ukrainians say they've taken out. We've no way of independently verifying that. But the Ministry of Defence here in the UK have been carrying out their own assessment. They've assets on the ground and clearly satellite imagery and the like. And other Western allies certainly say that the Russians are suffering some very significant losses here.
And extraordinarily, some abandoned tanks as well. We've seen this quite a lot on social media. Don't know how far wide-reaching it is, but certainly it seems that when the Russians and their relatively poor logistics run out of fuel or whatever else it might be, they abandon some pretty heavy machinery for Ukrainians to tow away with tractors.
Yeah, I mean, and it's understandable why they would, because they're effectively sitting ducks. If they run out of fuel, they can't go anywhere. You're just sitting waiting to be hit with, a British-supplied Enlaw missile or a Javelin missile or whatever happens to be aimed at you. So if you're out of fuel and you're sitting quite vulnerable like that, you can see why they're abandoning some of the equipment. Now, this is not to say that Russia isn't making some very significant advances. Of course it is. We've seen the tactic of surrounding these cities across Ukraine, then starting to do what is in the Russian game plan, which is to bombard them either with missiles or artillery. So that is taking place. But the more of these Western missile systems that can get into that country to arm the many members of the Ukrainian military, but also volunteers, those reservists and the like who've all been called up, the more weapons, anti-tank and anti-air weapons they can get, then the more effective they can be. And it may be, at the end of the day, they're outgunned, of course they are, and it's going to be a hell of a grind even. But in terms of actually taking the battle to the Russians in their own cities, it's possible, that they could prevail.